The judge. Can we talk about then, just very practically, why can't the United States get Mr. Abrego Garcia back, Trump administration lawyer? Your Honor, I will say, for the court's awareness, that when this case landed on my desk, the first thing I did was ask my clients that very question. I have not received to date an answer that I find satisfactory. The judge. Okay, well, I do appreciate your candor. So, the Trump administration has put its own lawyer between a rock and a hard place here, right? This lawyer is trying his best to answer the judge's questions truthfully, while also following the directions of his client, Donald Trump. An impossibility. That court proceeding was on Friday. By Saturday, that lawyer was gone, put on indefinite administrative leave from the Justice Department, as was his supervisor. Attorney General Pam Bondi explained the situation with this statement. She said, quote, "At my direction, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States. Any attorney who fails to abide by this direction will face consequences." And that is this case. That's the Maryland case of this Maryland father that they accidentally sent to El Salvador. That's this one case that has now gone up to the Supreme Court tonight and been put on puree by a unanimous but apparently terrified Supreme Court, which is desperately trying to spin something out of this that doesn't sound like it's saying no to Donald Trump. But this pattern, this kind of thing in court has been happening again and again and again, and it's starting to have a really interesting consequence. For weeks now, we have seen this pattern emerging. You've got lawyers representing the Trump administration who are being forced effectively to present arguments that either aren't truthful or don't make sense in court. And when they try to pull it off in open court, they face questioning from judges. And the judges immediately suss out that what the lawyers are trying to defend is indefensible or obviously untrue. And so again and again and again, you're seeing Trump administration lawyers basically being thumbtacked to the back wall of the courtroom by one judge after another. And it has produced these incredible headlines. Headline, is that really how you think this all works? Outraged judge repeatedly mocks DOJ lawyers, tears into them for being unprepared. Headline, judge in Alien Enemies Act case chides DOJ lawyer over refusal to answer key questions. Headline, judge snaps at Trump administration lawyers for gaslighting. And again, this is just an untenable situation these lawyers are being put in, right? You have to be truthful to a judge. You have to be truthful to the court as a lawyer who's standing there in front of the judge.
Or lose
But
your
being
license.
truthful in this administration is seen as a betrayal of Donald Trump. So what are these lawyers supposed to do, right? You literally cannot lie to a judge and stay a lawyer. But telling the truth to a judge in so many of these cases, not only is it not going to win you the case, it helps prove the point that the administration is losing all of these cases because they keep doing things that are really blatantly illegal, right? And if you lose the case in court, or you lose that day's proceeding in court because you told the judge the truth, well, that's cause for firing in Donald Trump's Justice Department. So what are you supposed to do? I mean, honestly, the answer is obvious, right? Ethically, you can see, whether or not you're a lawyer, right? You can see what you would do, what you should do if you were a lawyer in this case. You just do the right thing, right? You zealously represent your client, yes, but you always tell the truth. If you do that as a Trump administration lawyer, you will get fired for it. And so now we're seeing people get fired for it, and their supervisors get fired too. And all the Justice Department lawyers who are seeing that pattern emerge are sitting there thinking, do I want to lie to a judge and therefore be exiled from the legal profession? Or do I want to not lie to a judge and get fired from the Trump administration? Those are my choices. What else can I do? And so they're all quitting. We are now seeing this untenable situation reach its natural mathematical conclusion in a pretty dramatic way. The Washington Post is now reporting that at least half of the frontline lawyers in the Solicitor General's office are either preparing to leave or have announced their departures already. What's the Solicitor General's office? That's the office that specifically argues cases for the administration in front of the Supreme Court.
Wow.
A majority of their lawyers have now quit or are quitting. Quote, many of the lawyers leaving the office are uncomfortable or turned off by directives from Justice Department leaders. Again, the reporting here is that at least half of the lawyers whose job it is to defend Donald Trump at the Supreme Court, a majority of the office that has that responsibility has now quit or is about to quit. That seems like a bad sign, right? Seems like a bad sign in terms of what this administration is up to. I mentioned that we have Eric Holder, former Attorney General, here tonight. We're going to talk to him about this. And there's one other thing going on here that is really, it's the reason we called him. It's the thing I really feel like we all need to hear from him about. And it's this new executive order that Trump has just signed. We don't pay attention to all of them because effectively his executive orders aren't law, right? His executive orders are basically just like long tweets with calligraphy that he puts on a big menu board and signs after he's told what's in them. Like, his executive orders don't have force of law, but they are orders from the president. And he has just signed an executive order that orders the U.S. Justice Department to investigate two officials from his first presidential term, people who Trump has decided are his enemies. Chris Krebs from CISA, the Department of Homeland Security's cybersecurity agency, and Miles Taylor, who worked in the White House and wrote a book about Trump's dangerous authoritarian inclinations. Now, as if he is trying a little too hard to prove Miles Taylor's point about that, Trump has just signed this executive order that's not just him, yelling, lock him up into a microphone at a rally. It's him as president actually ordering his Justice Department to open investigations into these individual people at his direction. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney's response was on point and succinct. She said, quote, in a special mix of incompetence and evil, Trump has combined his disastrous implementation of 1930s tariff policies with Stalin-esque targeting of political adversaries. She says, speaking the truth is only a crime in countries ruled by tyrants. Legendary conservative judge Michael Luttig responded today by calling the demand, quote, the president's most constitutionally corrupt executive order to date. He says that this is occurring in the United States of America is shameful. It is a travesty of justice that Mr. Krebs and Mr. Taylor and the nation's law firms and legal profession are being forced to defend themselves against the President of the United States and his palpably unconstitutional conduct. The President obviously thinks the Supreme Court will ultimately side with him. It is just as obvious that it will not. Judge Luttig says, quote, but the innocent American citizens targeted with these unconstitutional executive orders should not have to wait one day longer for vindication of their constitutional rights. Their professional lives and livelihoods will be destroyed before such time as the Supreme Court rules. That is exactly what the president is counting on. That's why he continues to issue executive orders in defiance of the rulings of the federal courts. Judge Luttig says, quote, both Mr. Krebs and Mr. Taylor should immediately bring lawsuits in the Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. against the President, the Attorney General, and the Director of the FBI for vindictive/malicious prosecution. They should be prepared to litigate all the way to the Supreme Court before the two men are actually prosecuted. Judge Luttig says, quote, in my view, the lower federal courts should summarily strike down this executive order and quash the president's ordered investigation of these two honorable American citizens. The Supreme Court of the United States thereafter should summarily affirm. He concludes with this. We all know what's going on here at this point. The president is not going to stop until he is stopped, once and for all, by the federal courts. So this is one of the red lines, right? The president ordering the Justice Department to target individuals that he doesn't like. That is one of the red lines we have been expecting him to cross, and here it is. This is like This is like tyranny 101. This is intro to tyranny. This is no longer an advanced class where you have to like read the subtleties. This is very elementary stuff. Once the tyrant starts directing his prosecutors to open investigations into his named enemies because he named them as enemies, you're there. So what's going to be the response? If we've still got the antibodies to defend ourselves as a democracy, if our civil society is still working, if our legal profession is still on the job, what we ought to see here in response to this, in response to what will be not just these two guys being targeted, it'll be a dozen, it'll be 100, it'll be 1,000 of these, if Trump likes how this one goes and he isn't stopped from doing it. What we ought to see here, if our democracy is still kicking, what we ought to see here is a battalion of the highest end lawyers in the country flooding in to provide Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor with free legal representation and with the kind of no-holds-barred, super aggressive legal fight that Judge Ludig is describing today.
Amen.
Are we going to see it? As the biggest, poshest, most powerful law firms in the country, even tonight, continue to suck up to Trump and promise to do him favors in exchange for him no longer criticizing them or threatening them? Do we still have the juice as a country? Are we still kicking? Legal profession, you still there? Are all the pretty words America's most prominent lawyers are famous for about the rule of law and no fear or favor, are all those just pretty words? Are we going to see them show up? Because time's up. It is now.